So I think we're going.
Victor's out of CFAR. Oh, sorry.
Okay, and I believe we are going live. One sec.
Hey, everyone.
Okay. There we go. Hello everyone. We're just still getting set up a little bit, so
Just give us a couple minutes.
it takes a little bit for each thing to come online separately. We're going to be talking about the news, obviously Syria, and other things that come up. It's open forum. Be respectful, and oh, you know what I really need to figure out how to do, Brian, is when I have, so this goes straight to Periscope, which goes to Twitter. I need to figure out how to put the link. I don't think there's a way to put the link. I should ask Ebon. How do you put the link in Twitter as you go live? I only know how to do it after the fact. Or I think he might.
I do too.
Okay. It's okay.
At the same time.
We'll figure it out. Okay, so we have... I think we're live on Twitter and DLive and YouTube now. Okay, just check a couple things. So this is an open forum chat. Anyone that would like to come on and talk, as I said, we're going to talk of news of the day. I just finished rewatching a video with Max Blumenthal, whom I love, and I highly recommend following him on Twitter. He's great. He obviously covers a lot of foreign policy, as does Joanne Leon. I also look to her for this stuff. But anyway, he and Lee Camp were discussing what's going on in Syria and the allegations of the chemical attack. The video was from 23 hours ago, so I may actually be a little bit behind on that. Let's see.
Looks like Snork might be joining us.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. I guess I should leave phone up here, right? I don't know how that works. 646. Okay. Oh, we'll just try that. Okay.
Oh, I was wondering, do you think John Rachel might want to join?
That's possible. We might not. I mean, I think we can, if the subject comes up, we can take questions, but otherwise it might be best to sort of steer clear of that subject right now while things are a little bit heated. Brian and I have made the decision to work with the original author of the CFAR contract. We went on Uphill Media earlier today to discuss it, and it basically is for two reasons. One is that we did not agree with the promotion of MMT along with CFAR. It is not in any way a denouncing of MMT or anything like that. It's just that CFAR is supposed to be a populist contract with every agenda item supported by the majority of people. And MMT is really not understood. And, we've talked at length about how Bernie Sanders had Stephanie Kelton as his economic advisor, but kind of had the sense to not push it and talk about it, understanding that the majority of people would be like, what is this? What is he talking about? This sounds really out there. So, and then the other thing is we just want to make sure that CFAR, anything that we do related to it is all about honesty and integrity. I keep thinking of this quote of Barney Franks, where he was, I can't remember where it was or who was interviewing him, but he basically kind of said, well, the other side's taking money, so we kind of had to also, or we wouldn't be competing on a level playing field. And so it was kind of this just like, well, we got to play dirty also. And I think, I don't want to speak for you, Brian, but I think we're on the same page in that we just can't do things that are dishonest, or, we want to be part of representing, candidates that are honest. Please pronounce your name for me because I'm going to mess it up. Oh, hang on a second. We don't have sound. One sec. Okay, in the bottom corner, you'll see it's probably automatically muted.
Yeah, I think we're good.
There you go. Okay.
All right. So, hello.
Hello.
So,
this is our good friend. He goes by Snork. I'll let you say your real name if you care to. But please, if anybody doesn't know, you write the Guion Journal. I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Guion Journal, correct.
I've read a lot of your stuff and love it, but I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your first name.
Tedros. You just call me Teddy. So.
Oh, okay. That's easy. Yeah. Okay. Teddy. Well, thank you very much for joining us. This is something we kind of just started doing for open forum for people to just come on and talk about news of the day. And so, yeah, that's what we're doing. And kind of figured we'd get into Syria, of course.
A lot to talk about.
Yeah, a lot to talk about. I was just saying I really look to Max Blumenthal a lot on this kind of stuff. And I was just listening to a video with him and Lee Camp about what had happened. So, but I'll not steal the floor. Would you like to talk about it, or what are your thoughts on it?
For me?
Yes. Or any...
there's so many things to talk about. Sometimes you just have to kind of force yourself to laugh or smile at these things, because it's so, like, to think about the natural progression of where this is going to go, it just starts making me depressed. Mm-hmm. But actually, another writer at the Guion Journal just wrote an article today talking about how this is pretty much a parallel to what Japan did in Pearl Harbor. So it's, the powerful get to set laws and then they never follow them. Mm-hmm. And the UN was established to make sure that countries don't get, don't go around just attacking and messing with the other country's territorial integrity, and we do that all the time. So, it's disheartening, because I feel like us, the people, we the people that's supposed to be in charge, have no recourse. We're just, we become useless observers. The vast majority of Americans don't want any more wars. Initially, Obama got elected promising no more wars, only to start more wars than Bush did. Mm-hmm. Then now Trump came in saying, okay, no more wars. And now he's continuing the same legacy. And he's actually, like, when you look at the weaponry that he's now introducing and where this is going to go, it's just saddening. So I know I sound kind of depressed about all this, but...
It is depressing.
Yeah.
my daughter, who's 20, is in college in Scotland. She had to just leave America, she said, last
I
fall.
don't blame her. Ask her if she has room for one more.
Yeah. Yeah, but she called me and she said, I haven't paid a lot of attention to this because it's just so depressing. And she said, what's going to happen? Are we going to war? And I just said, well, I like to think that the big players here understand that it's game over if this goes that far. And so I tried to reassure her that that probably wouldn't happen. It's just going to be little, but I don't know.
So I was thinking about this. Like, why would anyone? It's irrational. I was thinking, like, the people you have to assume people act with irration. People that get elected and attain the highest levels of, I like your cup. I'm gonna have to give you a journal cup now. No, but
you have those?
Oh, I don't want to do that.
But do you actually have those though?
I do actually, but
that's awesome. No, that's great. Hey, promote your page all you want. I love your writing. I love. Yes, it's really good. So
I appreciate it. But no, so I was thinking they're not irrational. So then, what is the rationality behind this? And the only thing that makes sense at some point, the way I'm trying to rationalize it is that so follow me on this. Another 2008 happens, another big collapse. I don't think we're going to give it another shot, and in fact, I don't think they can resuscitate the system at that point because they could barely do it in 2008. So then, what they fear, the people that have all the power and clout and wealth in the world is another French Revolution, which is horrific for them. Because they know history, they know what happens when people get angry enough and rise up to defend their own interests. And sometimes their mob mentality sets in, and people become basket cases in that way. So then we humanity, or 99%, or whatever you want to call us, are the risk. The only rationality I could bring to this of why they would be pushing this type of conflict is if they're trying to mitigate the risk. Which then is horrific, because if a World War III does break out, it's not going to be an accident. It's because the Iraq War was planned in 1996 by PNAC. So these things don't just happen in a vacuum.
Right.
I'm just hoping at some point that the only thing that if that is the case, if they're intentionally pushing us to war because it's they'd rather have a world without instead of a world where they have less, then the only thing that's why I keep harping on unity all the time. Not only do I believe it, but it's also the only hope that we have, because their vitality, their strength is in our division, and if we stop being divided by class, by race, by gender, by religion, ideology, politics, orientation, and realize that we're all in this together, then maybe we'll have a shot. If not,
it's amazing to me how many people still haven't quite figured that out. That's what they're doing, and they still participate in that. It just, I don't know. I think a lot more people are awake, but there are still far too many asleep.
Yeah.
Sorry. Snork, do you want to jump in here at all? What do you think? No? Not yet?
Well, actually, I think that the planning for PNAC was much earlier. It had to have been at least March of the year that the first Gulf War ended. But they probably started putting the idea together. And somebody probably already had the idea planted in their head, maybe as far back as 72 or the late 70s.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, who knows, right? I mean, I've been reading books about how, I don't want to delve into like the conspiracy realm, but a lot of the wars, there was this guy that named Albert Pike from the Civil War, and he wrote a manifesto about how the 20th century is going to devolve or evolve or devolve. It really devolved. And to a T, it happened almost exactly as he wrote it. So now, it's not because he was some type of a prophet. You know, when you lay the groundwork for people to follow, and they followed eventually, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so, you know, these things become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It feels like we're just slow walking into a biblical prophecy. And we can do something about it, but we just refuse to.
I think we really empowered the oil people when the oil embargo happened in the early 70s. And I really think that's when the ideas were planted. And that's solely the only basis. I have no like secret information on why I would think that it was 72. But our focus did shift back then from looking at ores only in the Southeast Asia to, hey, we got to start thinking about the Mideast. And things really started ramping up in the Mideast.
Well, the more you pay attention, the more you learn, and things just don't add up. And the recent live stream, the 10-hour vigil for Assange, just big WikiLeaks supporter.
I'm not going to give you that. I'm going to give you a nonsense.
They had Ray McGovern on. And I love all these guys, John Kiriakou, all of them that come out and speak out and have the nerve to whistleblow. But he mentioned David Kelly, who I can't believe I only learned about this not that long ago. But is everyone familiar with David Kelly from...
off the top of my head.
Okay, so that's the thing. It's like, how are we all so like in the dark about this stuff, right? But so David Kelly was a Welsh scientist, and he basically said, controversial death. Okay, he said he disputed that about the weapons of mass destruction. And I don't want to get any of this wrong here.
Okay, this is back in like 2000.
2003.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know. Okay.
So he was identified in newspapers as the man the government believed was the source for a controversial BBC report on Iraq. The scientist, let's see. The report in May 2003 cast doubt on the government's claim that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction capable of being deployed within 45 minutes. And then, let's see, he gave testimony. 2 days afterwards, the 59-year-old was found dead in Woodland a few miles from his home after apparently taking his own life. I don't know. I mean, Ray McGovern mentioned it and said, you know what, just kind of, these things happen, and I don't think it's a conspiracy or a wild, off-the-wall thing to say, wow, here's this scientist that said this, and then he's dead.
There's this other lady that was set to testify before before Congress about the mosquitoes. This just happened recently, and then mysteriously she passed away. Have you heard about this, by the way? There was a lady that a scientist, I want to say from the CDC, I'm not sure. So she was set to testify about the effects of releasing mosquito, or something like that. I really saw it in passing. And then came to DC and she passed that. Let me Google it, see if I can find it. But she was set to testify, and then she was found dead in a hotel. These things, when they just happen, one-off, is one thing. But then we start seeing like a pattern developing all the time. That people that speak. That's because the reason that they do this is because there's a lot of money, being threatened. If you look back throughout history, people that have a tendency to threaten the hustle of hustlers, it doesn't end well for them. So the biggest threat to hustle is love. And people that speak about love and unity, it never ends well for them. The system embraces you and will adore you and will elevate you if you speak divisiveness, like most of these
Yep.
politicians do. If
Yep.
you preach separable grievances, if you speak hate and anger and antagonize,
Yep.
president did, and in a very slick way too. I mean, I know Obama was very slick about it, but he did that too. He just was very hidden in the way and how he did it, because I wrote about this in the past, but strategic silence that these politicians do. So when somebody that's not from your demographic gets hurt or wounded, or God forbid, when somebody gets killed like Trayvon Martin, it doesn't take that much of a hurt, for example, for a Republican to come out and say, I mourn the loss of Trayvon Martin. But they don't, because they know that's not their demographic. So strategically, they're silent. And then on the flip side, when somebody, there was what I always use quote marks, when this white lady in San Francisco was killed by, I think it was a Mexican immigrant or something like that.
Yeah.
And Obama said nothing. And that's also the strategic silence, because this is how the system thrives. And so that enrages the Republicans. And when Republicans do that, that enrages the liberals. And then they're laughing at us. They're doing this on purpose.
Wow, I hadn't thought about that specifically. You're absolutely right. Right.
So when a cop gets killed on a line of fire, Democrats say nothing. But then when a kid, a quote unquote black kid, gets killed in Chicago by a cop, or Minnesota, then Republicans say nothing. And these things, it's an intentional way to just splinter people apart and to have them fight each other. And we fought for it too, because people on the liberal side say, oh, so Republicans get upset when this happens, but when this happens, they don't say nothing, and then vice versa. And so now we're using human suffering as a chess match.
Well, because it's far easier, especially for we're all of us are kind of we're activists, or journalists, we read all this. For a lot of people that are kind of the low info voters, it's much easier to just get into your lane, get into your team, and not pay attention. It's my team. It's that team sports mentality that we have in this country. And instead of looking at the issues, that takes too much work. So, or too much time, really. I say that also kind of putting that on citizens, but it's also on our media, because people are busy working 60 hours a week. They should be able to go and catch 20 minutes of the news and be able to find just facts. But that we are so far beyond that, like
way beyond that.
It's that's out the window. So, yeah. No, I didn't know. Did you find who was the researcher? I remember a male scientist, I think, was found like in a river or something. Is that maybe that's the same?
Hold on. No, this is it right here. April 6th. Is that the one?
I see. Oh yeah. Okay, I see it.
If I remember correctly, it was a.
Oh, okay. Yep, it's Timothy Cunningham.
No, hold on.
There's a different one. Okay.
Yeah, somebody else. It just happened.
Okay.
Let me see what I can find while you're doing that. But yeah,
Sure.
I don't know the facts, particulars behind. I've heard about him as well.
Well, we're all having to kind of be our own citizen journalists to find things out. Right. It's a little time consuming, Like not getting it from cable news.
So it was a Florida activist who fought release of modified mosquitoes, was found dead. And this happened, let's see here. So if you go to, I'm going to send it to you on your...
okay. On Twitter? Okay. Well, Snork here is a scientist, so whenever we get into things like this, he usually can...
So this is actually posted by WJLA, and it says, a longtime opponent of genetically engineered mosquitoes.
Okay.
Washington, D.C. hotel, she prepared to present a petition with over 200,000 signatures to the EPA. So she wasn't giving a testimony. I saw that in passing, and I just didn't get to look into it yet. But yeah, she was actually delivering a petition saying that they don't want genetically modified mosquitoes to be released in Florida. And so yeah, I mean, if you just looked at this only by itself, you could say yeah. Then when these things just it's like in Russia, this happens all the time, and you immediately suspect them because we've been trained to believe that the Russians will do anything.
Right.
Here, we're like, well, and of course it was. Don't go into that though. That's conspiracy theory.
Right.
That one keeps happening.
Exactly. Well, yeah, we should get into that about the, if anybody knows more. My daughter was asking me about the poisoning of the Russian. That it wasn't, my husband saw something again, like you, in passing. I saw it and I have to look it back up. Something about a scientist in Switzerland, I think.
Yeah, it was Skripal or something. That was his name.
Yes, but...
got poisoned.
Yeah, the scientists in Switzerland determined it wasn't. It was from either somewhere in the West, but I'm not sure. Snork, do you know any more about that by chance?
Yeah, they determined that it was BZ, not Novichok.
Oh, see, he just knows this off the top of his head. And so, where is that? Is that made in certain places or?
Well, not certain places, just the U.S. and U.K.
Oh.
Oh man.
Any basement.
Down.
Yeah.
Any basement.
If I could just pitch on that, the thing that bothers me is it's not necessarily, it's this rush to judgment and journalists that are supposed to question authority, and they don't. They just run it up the flagpole immediately.
Yes.
So there's, even with this whole Syria thing, the fourth estate is supposed to be there to keep government honest. So what happens when a fourth estate is just, reporting, and they're not actually going through and saying, okay, this is your version. Now let me go out there and see who I could get to corroborate the story and independently validate what you're telling me. They're not doing that. They're just immediately broadcasting, and this is propaganda.
Right. No, we're punishing. We're punishing that.
Yeah.
That's done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The one person that was actually doing his job, and these, the Committee for Protecting Journalists, the CPJ, they make a show out of, protecting journalists in third world countries or developing nations. They say nothing happening right here in America. It's
unreal.
This was one of my early concerns, was that I exactly identified the agent so fast.
Right.
And when you have a small amount of an agent, and you need to identify it, smaller amounts means more care and more time.
Right.
Yet it was almost immediate that they came back with it. So now that we're seeing other people responding, the secondary, it's starting to fit more of the timeline that I would expect somebody investigating it to take.
Right. Yeah, but this rush to say who's responsible, it I don't know. It's so irresponsible.
And then you have like Teddy's article here about Tucker Carlson. So then you have this bizarro world situation with Tucker Carlson actually having the correct narrative for once. It's weird. It's just
it shocked me. I was like, it moved me to write an article congratulating somebody for doing what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how outrageous it is. It's almost like there's a joke that Chris Rock, he said, this dude who keeps bragging about, I'll take care of my son. He's like, you're supposed to take care of your son. You want a cookie?
Yeah.
Brag about.
Yeah, you're supposed to be practicing journalism.
Right.
Yeah.
But yet it was so shocking that it literally moved me. And to be honest, that article got picked up by Naked Capitalism, and so it's been getting
that's awesome.
tons of hits, and because
Yes.
so they were shocked too. Like, yeah, this is actually a story that somebody doing their job is a story.
Well, I think, and I don't want to heap too much praise on Tucker Carlson. I'm not.
Me neither.
But I think he's actually an independent. I know he leans right, and he says, okay.
Yeah.
So he says a lot of things I don't agree with, but there are times that he is the one reporting, some of the facts, at least,
It was the article I wrote was a backhanded compliment to him because, in a way, because at the end of the day, he's still with Fox News. Fox News is not news; it's a business model. Present information and quote unquote news through a partisan filter, just the same way that he does. He presents everything. Even his rebuke of Trump was very, very the softest of rebuke. He was almost saying, excusing Trump and saying it was not his fault. And so he's a shill, but sometimes a shill actually deserves the fact that he's a shill and saying this was actually what shocked me because, on this MSNBC, the party of the war, the party of the left, they've been egging war since Trump has been elected. And so even in that same clip of Tucker Carlson, he shows Andrew Mitchell, he shows Joe Scarborough, he shows these hacks on the left actively encouraging confrontation stance. So I don't know, it's crazy. And the fact that we're congratulating Fox and dissing MSNBC, 2008 version of me would have been like, "Are you okay?"
I know.
Yeah,
I totally understand. I think a lot of us feel the same way. But the truth is where you find it. I mean, you've got to be able to. If you're so closed off that you can't even listen to another side that might. I'm not saying they're right all the time, but they may be right in this one instance. You've just got to open your eyes and your ears and listen. But it does make me wonder, what is all this going to mean for the future of journalism? And we've kind of gotten into this quite a bit. Do you know Jamal Thomas? Did I ask you this already? He does the Progressive Soapbox channel.
I know who you're talking about, but I haven't linked up.
He's probably still on live right now, huh, Brian? That you were watching. He'll sometimes come over and talk with us.
Okay.
But we got in a big long talk, and I know he covered this subject of we've got a situation where the cable, the mainstream media is failing miserably. So you've got all of these other, independent media cropping up. And a lot of them are doing a really great job. And the funny thing is that we've got all the court jesters, the comedians. We've got Jimmy Dore and Lee Camp and Randy Credico, whom I love, Randy Credico. All of those guys, the comedians, are reporting the news, And but we also do have a problem with some of the independent media not practicing journalism any better than some of the mainstream media, and because you've got to verify facts, and that gets a lot of people worked up. If it's sensationalist, it's for clicks. Then we've got that misinformation to contend with there too. So I just wonder what's going to happen going forward. A lot of our good journalists are on RT. Ed Schultz and Lee Camp and
Is Dan Rather on RT?
Is who?
Dan Rather. I thought he was.
I don't think so. Did he go over to TYT at one point or something?
Not to my knowledge.
Where's David Schuster? I love him too, but he's on another, I can't remember what it's called. But no one will pay attention to, when I say, do you ever hear what happened to Larry King? And people go, oh, what happened? He disappeared. Did he pass away? No, he's on RT. At least last I checked he was. But those people will be dismissed because they're on RT.
So I think that's part of our challenge going forward.
Yeah.
Is to build it. We have to turn the strength of mainstream media into a weakness. And so, like when I write, I'm always saying, well, I don't have, millions in advertisement dollars, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really like juxtapositioning a weakness. It's not really a weakness. I don't want that to be a strength of mine. But some people could look at that and say, you have nobody backing you, but then that could become a strength. And the strength of a mainstream media, the fact that companies like Nestle and Starbucks and ExxonMobil and Raytheon are their extortionists, turn that into a weakness. And then by doing that, you can actually drive the message that these people are not for you. They're just giving you junk news. And so if there's enough of us doing this, like the early adopters have to get on the same page.
Yes.
And so we're not on the same page right now. And by the way, for me, there's a tried and true method that I use, whether or not to pay attention to people. And it's Twitter, right? I go down their timeline and I look at the first 10 tweets that's up there, and if everything is through a left-right divide or a black-white divide or through an ideology, instead of discussing the issues without a loyalty to partisanship or to whatever identity that they're affiliating with, I walk away from them. They're toxic. They're not looking for truth. They're just pandering to a crowd. So the 10 tweet rule. So you go to your whoever you.
I like that.
Follow, and you go down and if you see a pattern, the first 10 are the same. They keep blaming Republicans, for example, and not once do they criticize Democrats. Walk away from them. They're either paid shills or they're trying to be paid shills, and they have no interest in trying to actually discover truth. Nobody owns truth, but it's a journey for it. So there's some people that are trying to speak truth and trying to discover truth, and then others who are just lying, and their interest is to make money. And so that for me, that's one of the ways.
That's fantastic. It's funny you say that, because one of the issues that I'm really passionate about is election integrity. And I have noticed with a couple of election integrity activists and groups that, they're tweeting out everything is about and I'm not denying gerrymandering, or that, right now we've got gerrymandering that favors Republicans. I mean, I'm well aware of all that, but they'll tweet, as you say, 10 things, and it's all about what the Republicans are doing, and not a word about what happened during the primary.
Exactly.
And not a word about Tim Canova's ballot destruction, or what Ray Lutz is working on out in California, and the mail-in ballots that were completely in reverse of what all the other numbers were. And they won't, and I'll sort of, anytime that I jump in and say something about that, someone else, usually a third person that's kind of on that other side of saying, oh, it's just the Republicans, will jump in and say, so you're saying we shouldn't have this?
Right.
No, I didn't say that. I just said that we need to acknowledge. Right. I don't see how we go forward from this point right now in 2018 when that happened in the Democratic primary. And I mean, we'll never know, but I think a lot of us feel pretty confident it would have been Bernie had he not been cheated. And we'll never know, but without addressing that, I don't see how it's absolutely the pot calling the kettle black. So I see that all the time, but especially with issues like election integrity. So
there's two things, right? If you're speaking about if you're speaking about social justice, and if you're not addressing economy, you're fraud, as far as I'm concerned, because how are you going to speak about social justice and not acknowledge what gives birth to them?
Yes.
People are stuck in homelessness and hopelessness and indigence and poverty, and even the ones that are making money are living paycheck to paycheck. You're not addressing that. You want to focus on, the identity politics. I don't take people seriously at that point if they're not going to acknowledge the economics behind it.
And they don't want to talk about class, because class gets right down to the really heart of the issue.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and the divides that we have are simply being given a platform simply because they don't want us talking about class. They'd rather have us talking about all these other absolutely nonsensical issues,
Right.
simply to keep us from talking about what the real root of the problem is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's also why you have these paid demagogues that's actually, feeding a fire into the public square, because they're trying to get us to just say only monopolize pain. You know, by the way, I was like that myself. It wasn't until I went through a period of homelessness myself, and I was, going from shelter to shelter, and spent a year and a half. I'm not, no pity. All right. I mean,
I read your about that somewhere where you wrote about that.
Yeah, but I'm thankful though, because when I was living the life of a high price consultant, I never appreciated the small things in life. So it takes hardship to make you appreciative.
Yes.
But up until that moment, I used to think black and white and left and right. And when I saw homelessness on all sides, and for me, like my Damascus moment, I guess if you call it that, I was in a Greenville shelter, at the Greenville Mission in South Carolina, and I saw like a 7-year-old white girl. And at that moment, like, it made me cry initially, because I was so pissed off that happens. And then I was like, how can I sit up here and look at the world only through a colored prism? And things are happening across the board. But that doesn't mean, for example, that racism doesn't exist. Hello.
Right. Hi. This is Andrea.
Hello, Andrea.
No, I know what you mean, but when you have, Bernie caught so much hell for only focusing on economics, and they felt like he wasn't addressing, it was a criticism, even though he was clearly, look at him back in the 60s, what he was doing and what he did in college at the University of Chicago, where he went and, they sent the couples to go see if they could rent an apartment, and you probably know this story. But because he didn't specifically address Black America, that he kind of caught hell for that. So I think you kind of have to do both, I guess, because you can't deny that, skin color does affect how you're treated and you're in this country. But you're right. I mean, economics is the great equalizer there, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just because we say, hey, so there's a root for everything, and then there's I'm not even going to say secondary, but the racism has been part of the genetic makeup of this country for a long time, and hopefully the only way that we can address it is if we stop vilifying each other, but going around and being counterproductive and saying things like white privilege, it doesn't lend any. It doesn't do anything to address the core issues. The way to solve these things is to have a hand of friendship, not a pointing fingers at each other.
So what are your thoughts on that specifically? I mean, when people say that, because
about
white privilege, yeah. I mean,
it pisses me off now. I used to be the main one saying that, but now that I look at it, you're not contributing to the dialogue. When you're accusing somebody of being privileged, and they're like, well, their initial reaction is, what do you know about me? Just because you think I have it easy, and because I've seen homelessness everywhere that I've seen, and you can't necessarily extrapolate what I know to apply to everyone else. But the vast majority of people that I saw at missions and shelters were quote unquote white people. And now there's a reason I keep saying quote unquote, because to describe who we are based on an artificial, like a color that we're not these colors. Nobody is white. Nobody's black. You do not find anybody in the world that's actually white, like literally white, or like this color white, or like black.
Snork.
Color.
No,
it just doesn't exist. And these constructs were imposed upon us to divide us, and we keep falling for it at all times. As long as we focus on our differences, then we're never going to be able to, So it pisses me off because it doesn't contribute anything to the dialogue. There's more quote unquote white people in poverty, and homeless. I mean, on food stamps, than there are black folks. That doesn't mean black folks are not suffering. Who, like, why even go down that lane of who's suffering more? Like, for me, if I broke my leg and I see a person come down the street in a wheelchair, and I'm like, man, without knowing that, I'm like, my foot hurts. He's like, you asshole, what do you know about pain? Look at me. Like, even if I want to be sympathetic to his cause, the mere fact that he just accused me of not knowing what pain is, it doesn't contribute to the conversation, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, I think the one place, this just popped in my head, but,
Sure.
The one place, or not one, there are plenty, the institutional white privilege, I guess, is more, like, what pops in my mind is the killing of Philando Castile, which I happened to catch that, like, right after it happened, so I was actively watching as it happened, and I was just shaking, and I'll never forget that experience. And I remember seeing, though, the way, here they have killed this guy or shot this guy, there's a kid in the back seat, and they order out his girlfriend at gunpoint. And I remember looking at that scene and going, why are they treating her this way? Like, why in the world is she being ordered out at gunpoint? And it crossed my mind, would that be happening if she was white?
Yeah.
And that's where you have to say, no, it wouldn't. I'm sorry, it wouldn't.
If I could add to that, though, I guess because I love to write, I know how powerful the words are. I could sit up here and say, I'm disadvantaged because of this. It's not the same thing as saying you're advantaged because of this. Because when I tell you about what the disadvantages that I face, I'm telling you about my pains and my struggles. You're open to then at that point hearing me. Right? So it's not accusatory. It's actually, I'm trying to have a dialogue with you and telling you about what I struggle with. The minute that I say, you're privileged, as opposed to I'm disadvantaged, it shuts our conversation. It becomes counterproductive. You see what I'm saying? So these things, look, there's a lot of reasons why Trump got elected, but a big part of it too is the fact that there's a vast amount of people on the other side who feel like, well, how come nobody's listening to my pain?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Right.
they got a fraud who pretended like he was listening to their pain. Now they're going to find out the same way that we found out. When I say we, I was a big time about the same way that we found out hope and change was not really hope and change. Now they're going to find out.
Right.
He's going back on TPP. He's going back on the corner of the wall. Stupid. It's upsetting.
Yeah, right. We knew he didn't mean those things, but yeah, there were. Wish I had it in front of me. There was a Guardian article that I must have tweeted out 100 times right after he was elected, and it was all about the really extreme poverty of much of America, which was largely white, and that segment of the population has like lost the most wealth, their health, they're dying younger, drug addiction, all of that. So, to deny that is, that's what the Democrats and the mainstream media tried to do, was just ignore that was a factor, or the fact. It's the listen liberal. It's what it is.
Yeah.
Snort.
One fact, and until we recognize that the wealth gap is the biggest problem, we are generations away from resolving the wealth gap between the races. But unless we start resolving it now, they're going to be no better off. There's no way to us to resolve any of the problems with the races until we resolve the wage gap first.
Right.
Right. There's just, it's a sandcastle, and that's the bottom layer. Because let's say we can do away with discrimination in hiring. Let's say we can discrimination in any other preference. Still the main push is going to be, I don't have money to do this, I don't have money to do that, and it starts to collapse. I don't have a car, I'm limited to jobs where I can walk or bike. And some people, you can't take a job in another city if you have children and you have no help, no daycare for them. Just even being able to afford to get to another location and go to a job interview, to wear a suit, to have the right haircut.
Yep.
Are financial issues that even if we resolve the issue of race, who knows what kind of fashion is going to be in play that day? That person better have the money to be able to present themselves. It's just not going to happen until the money is resolved.
Yeah, right. I agree, and it's going to get worse because the more there's disparities between the haves and the have-nots. If I could talk about this for a second too.
Absolutely.
When I get upset when people say, by the way, let me just explain this for a second. I think y'all have heard about Debbie, the same progressive, right? So there's an episode that she had where she says, I'm not going to lie to you, Democrats trigger me more than the Republicans. I expect this from Republicans. But Democrats I used to be one. Now they upset me whenever I hear their lies. And so in a lot of ways, I personalize the Democrats more than I do Republicans. I acknowledge they're equal liars and frauds, but it's like I can't believe I used to be the main one just going around selling this, and now I'm like, wow, I can't believe it. But when the people say, "Oh, Obama saved the economy in 2008," he did no such thing. If you look at the earning power and the income, the income, the potential of Americans between the bottom 99% or the bottom 90% really, and then the top 1%. The top 1%'s share of the economic pie and their wealth skyrocketed. In that same period, the rest of ours spiraled downwards. So then how do you define this as saving the economy? He saved 1% of the economy. 1%, well, they own almost a half of the economy, but he didn't save the economy for the people. He saved it for the powerful. And so that lets you know, and this country has literally, I don't think it would come back from this, to be honest with you, until everything falls apart. So as these things get worse, and as these things, the disparities become even more stark, the heat that's why they keep increasing the temperature on identity politics, because they want us to fight each other instead of saying, why is this happening? Martin Luther King was trying to bridge the divides between black and white, between left and right. You see what happened to him. So we live in an era of anti-heroes. There's nobody who has a large following saying, stop, we're in this together. So it's going to get worse because we keep fighting each other instead of actually saying, enough of this. We deserve a shot. And by we, it's not just people that look like me or think like me, but people that struggle like me.
Excellent. Yeah, very well put. I'm glad you brought up MLK again, because I thought about it a little bit ago, and I kept replaying this one segment of this interview over and over again just because of the line that this Dr. William Pepper had to say on Redacted Tonight. He's the lawyer that wrote and he investigated the Martin Luther King's murder and assassination. But there's this line in there, and I'm not going to get the quote exactly right, but he basically says, if you have power in money or in numbers, and if you are not corruptible, and he was not corruptible, there is only one way they can stop you. And that just really stuck out to me. I was like, wow, okay, yeah, that's it. I mean, because I think most are corruptible, and the ones that aren't, we can look at these assassinations, and it's not crazy to question them once you start really learning what actually happened and the whole story, and the fact that he was pushing for economic rights, economic equality at that point. It's interesting.
I've been noticing this trend, and it's not just a person that we know, but it's other people. And in the group like Science for the People that I'm in, and another campaign, and these people, they come in and they lie and then they try to like make fun of populism. They're just like populism is a bad thing, you know, populism is right wing. It just doesn't make sense. Or populists are self-serving and they are trendy. It's like, and they're not populist. And there's like this thing where it's like words and definitions don't mean anything. Like we can just make up stuff, and you know, no, that's not the truth. You just made that up.
Well, the populist word becomes negatively associated with Trump and to some extent Bernie.
I've never heard of Science for the People. What's that organization?
Oh, it started in 1969 with Noam Chomsky and the Pounds Commission report.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
It was just basically talking about the corrupting influence of money in university research and defense contracts and everything. And I think they got it back balanced, but now it's like back to 70% funded by defense contracts and
Always the money. Always the money.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the money, you know, the whole thing with the 2008 financial crisis, I think, look, let's face it, the only reason it got so much coverage, you know, you wound up having the upper middle class also affected, because all of a sudden it was people's 401ks and it was their housing, their house values dropping. Whereas, you know, the other half of the country is going, nothing's any different. We're still scraping by, right? But it was that it hit the liberal class. It hit that that Thomas Frank talks about in Listen Liberal. It hit that elite class. And so all of a sudden it was like, whoa, wait a minute, we've got to do something. You know, something I knew.
It was, you know, it was kind of the middle class. I mean, compared to the super rich, because it was like something if you had more than $3 million, it wasn't federally insured, and they just took it all, you know. And they said, you know, it was your fault for not like diversifying your funds and investing in the, you know, stock market casino.
Right.
You know, you saved your money. You're thinking you're being responsible, and like, nope. Now you're just like everybody else.
Yeah.
I think we can only make progress on this if we could get. It's 99.9% of humanity to come together, because this is even people that are making like $800,000 a year. They're not. If things fall apart, they're not really safe either. You know,
right?
And unless you have so much money that you're able to escape the gravity of inflation, then you're with the rest of us. And as society continues to devolve, whatever the possessions that they have is on the line too. So somehow we need to expand this to isolate. Maybe it's just billionaires. Excuse my language. That's what billionaire.
No, that's allowed here. You can say whatever.
No, maybe seriously, like if we're able to, I don't know where. I was talking to somebody in the past, and I said, I don't know where I don't know where evil ends and compliance begins. I've been trying to figure that out for a while. Like what is? And so the only way I could isolate it is to say, if you're actually sitting at the table and coming up with policies that make people suffer, that's evil. The rest of us, you know, so the rest of us are just complying. And even people that are working at a Safeway, nobody is really free of this system. You know, it's kind of like the Matrix. But then there's actually people that actively push evil, and so somehow it's the compliant part. Unite around that.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about that recently too, about how it's the system that's corrupt. Yeah. So even if, and sorry, Brian, you've heard me mention this many times, I attended the Unrig the System Summit, and there was a woman there, Carla Miller, she runs a site, it's cityethics.org, and I did not expect it to be such a broad thing that had such a big impact on me, but it really did, because she talked about how you could go in, you know, it takes an extremely rare person to be able to come into some corrupt organization or corrupt system and do something different and stick by, these principles of doing the right thing, because it's just set up that way. So until we change those systems, it's really not realistic to expect people to go in and do differently, because it's just the way it is. So yeah, I would love to get her on to talk. That was great.
And my point to that is that we're expecting the world to change. We're trying to change the world around us. But if we're not first willing to change ourselves, how can we expect the world to change? It's not going to work that way.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we could sort of touch on that without getting too specific, but yeah, I mean, I think that we're all human, and when we make a mistake and we're called out on it, our instant response is to be defensive, and then it kind of snowballs. We're all fallible. We all make mistakes, but anyway, can't really get into that too much. So, Andrea, did you want to talk about anything else specifically, or did you just?
I don't know if you guys got that email.
Oh, from John? Yeah.
So
no.
we're part of.
It's all yours.
Oh, so we're not gonna. I think it's best to not. I'll just say this. It's really disheartening when you see division among progressive groups. There's a lot of you kind of realize why the left never gets anything done. There's a lot of arguing, and we're part of an organization that Brian and Andrea and I, Andrea was very, very new, doing candidate contracts, basically to kind of candidates make promises to voters, and there was just stuff that went on. It's not even really worth getting into, but disagreements about the direction it was going amongst committee members and stuff, and I think we've worked things out, but it's just disheartening when you run into we're all supposed to be on the same page. We all want the same goal, or have the same goals, I think, and unfortunately personalities get in the way, and everybody's got their hang-ups, I guess. What else can I say?
I forget who said this, so I'm gonna ask an open question, right?
Okay.
So I've never really had a home politically, to be honest with you, right? I voted ever since I became a citizen. I voted for Clinton in '96. I've been voting Democrat my whole life, to be honest with you. I made one mistake in 1 year because I voted for George Allen. That was only because his father was a Redskins coach in the '70s, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna vote for his son. So I was really a low information voter. This is when I first became a citizen. I think it was '96. So,
and where did you come? You came here in '96, or just before that?
I came in '82.
Oh, okay.
Then I became a citizen. It took a long time for me to become a citizen. You had to get a green card, and then you had to wait, and then we had to go back to it. That's a whole nother book.
Oh, okay.
But there's a quote where this guy said, "The label is the problem itself." It was the most profound quote. It kind of made me reassess everything. That when we accept a label, by extension, we create an enemy, because anyone that doesn't belong to that label then becomes an enemy that needs to be either converted or conquered. So I guess for me, I've always self-identified as being liberal for a long time. But even when I really think about it, I'm very liberal when it comes to how I apply things for other people. But I'm kind of old-fashioned when it comes to myself. Even when I was running the streets in my 20s and doing all kinds of nonsense, I was really I'm kind of old school like my dad. And I think most of us are like that. I think most of us can't really be put into one box and say this is who we are. So I wonder when we kind of latch on to labels, whether that's the problem itself. Is it possible to be free of labels and say this is the idea that we want, and do away with labelism altogether, Is that too much to ask?
I'm going to give you a personal example of this.
Okay.
Some of you know, some of the people here know my history, know where I've come from. In the 90s, I was a very angry young man and very just upset at the world and couldn't figure out, where to channel my anger. And I was going to City College at the time, and I kind of got pulled into the Nation of Islam. And it basically gave me a way to focus my anger, but at the same time, it literally started to eat me up from the inside. And it wasn't until I remember this night very well. It was in 1996. I was up late, and for some reason I was watching TV and happened to see, I think it was the very last interview with Carl Sagan, and it broke my heart to see this guy, because you could tell he was sick, you could tell he was dying, and at that point I realized that I needed to make a serious change. Because here was this guy who had genuine concerns about humanity as a whole, and here I was on this very destructive path because of the crap I couldn't get out of my head. And at that point, I realized that I had to let all that go, and that humanity as a whole is. I mean, that's the most important thing. I mean, we all have a responsibility for each other. If we can't get to the point where we drop these labels and start to really act as brothers and sisters to one another, we're not going to make it.
So yeah, I mean, I concur. It's just hard though. I think that's part of the inherent disadvantage that we have. Rich, like uber rich people don't care. They don't have an ideology. They don't have a label. The only label is money. That's all they care about. They're just like a laser. People that pretend that they're right and left, like if you look at Warren Buffett, he trends like he's left, and then the Koch brothers look like they're right. They're not. They don't have an ideology. They just care about their money, maximizing their dollars at all times, and enhancing their image so that they could actually look like they're angels when they are devils. But the rest of us, though, because we don't have the little that we have is not as much as what they have, then we become slaves of these labels, and it's hard.
Yes.
That's part of. We're tribal by nature because of this.
Yes.
The only way that you give up tribalism is when you have enough to where you feel protected. Everyone else, when they don't have enough, they form tribes in order to feel protected. I don't know how you overcome this. You just
and people get shamed for feeling the way they feel. Like, I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you feel how you feel, that's a fact. Right, and so if you think that something might be true, that's an opinion. It's not. I just.
Well, even
if they care about power too.
Even if you look at just history, that at a time the Irish were considered, the lowest of the low, right? And so why did you have so much of this, like, in Appalachia, the racism? It was like, okay, they go, oh, well, the slaves, the African people are beneath me, so at least I'm not the bottom of the barrel anymore.
Exactly.
I'm
with you.
When you look at it like that, and that's how it actually occurs, that's what keeps happening.
That's really what happened in the Civil War, and the run up to it. I keep using these quote marks. Just know from now on, by default, I'm using quote marks. I'm not going to do it going forward on this conversation. But no, black and white folks were you had the folks that were working with chains on them and it turned into human chattel. But then right next to them, working as indentured servants, basically as serfs, making I don't know how much they were getting paid. It wasn't that much. Were white folks. But then the reason that they didn't band together was like, well, at least I'm not them.
Right.
Right.
And so that's the trick of how the system of capital greed works. As long as somebody's lesser than us, and as long as we have this facade that we could join that upper echelon, then that's it. So we're sedated by somebody else's wealth, and then we're thankful because we're not as somebody else that's poorer than us. And meanwhile, every one of us are getting grounded to dust.
The most nefarious thing about capitalism, I've studied economics, the most nefarious thing about it is that at the same time, while it keeps you basically under the corporate thumb, it gives you this false notion that there's a chance that you can break ahead and reach, the upper crust of society. And there are so few that that make that it's absurd to even think. I mean, you've got a better chance of winning the damn lottery. I mean, it's
right.
I have a friend who's actually a banker. So she's a VP of a multinational bank. I see her all the time. But so one day I said, she told me how much she makes. I was like, damn, I didn't know you were making that much money. But I asked her, I said, hey, just out of curiosity, you're making that much money. Are you part of the 1%? You pretty much living the life, aren't you? She was like, heck no. I'm living paycheck to paycheck, right? So, I mean, she wasn't making millions of dollars. She was making, she was making like 300, 350, something like that a year. So, but even at that rate, when you take into account what she was living at New York,
right?
When you take into account the additional expenses and of course, it's just human nature that what we have, the more we spend. Exactly. My first job when I graduated from college, I was making $36,000 a year. I was like, oh, I got it made. And then I got bumped up to 45. I was like, I can't live in an efficiency. I have to get a 1-bedroom. And it just kept happening. Every time I got a raise, I was like, I can't drive a 95 Toyota. I have to
Right.
And meanwhile, every time I was making more money, I was in the same paycheck to paycheck wage slave.
Yep, exactly. And we, Brian, weren't we talking about this recently about the study? It came out it may be 10 years ago now, so I'm sure the number is not 75,000 anymore. But
yes. Yeah, the amount that a person basically needs in order to just be happy and satisfied with their life. They don't need more. At that time, it was about 75. I think it's now probably close to 100,000 a year. But again, depending on where they're living and what their lifestyle is, if they found, the study found that even if they make more, they're not any happier. In fact, it usually goes the other way around. They start to become less satisfied with their lives because what happens is they get into this rut where they think, well, I need more, and I need more, and I need more, and it just turns into this vicious cycle. What psychologists have actually found is that there is a very close correlation between people who have the psychological disposition to be hoarders and people who are extremely wealthy.
Yeah, becomes an obsession.
Yeah, exactly.
But they also did determine though that jump from poverty up to at that point was 75,000. That does make you happier because all of a sudden you go from, extreme stress of I can't pay my rent and I don't have to that's like comfort. You can actually take care of things, and that does affect happiness. But no amount beyond that does. So it was very interesting. I think it's very true. Very true. So, when did you start the Guion Journal? Well, you want to tell a little bit more about it? Because I don't even remember what it was. It has to have been at least a year ago that I stumbled across one of your articles and read it and really liked it, started following you. But what's the history of it?
So I was living in a farm mission in Wellington, Colorado. It was a very hard time in my life. I moved out there penniless, hopeless, all that. but I Googled on there. I typed in God Farm Mountain because those three things were reminding me of my childhood in Ethiopia. So popped up a mission in Wellington, Colorado. That's how the most important decision of my life was just based on three random words. So I went there for a year, lived on the farm for a year, was making $7 a week as a farm chef, living on the farm for free. It was like a community mission basically.
Oh, okay.
So then I started writing. Writing finally came back to me and kind of emerged from this dark pit of hopelessness I was in. And I started writing. Initially, I just started writing in a book, and then I started writing on Facebook. And then Betty, who was the co-founder of the Human Journal, it was like, you write amazing things. Why are you just wasting it on Facebook? Nobody's going to pay attention to it. You don't go to Facebook to read a one-page status. So one day we're kind of sitting back, and I was like, okay, what if I just say? So then we're kicking around different names, and the Gillen Journal was like, and then it kind of stood for the things I want to write about. Because, like I said, originally I'm from Ethiopia. The Nile River was renamed. We call it the Abba Gillen. So the Gillen River, I didn't want to get too religious to this, but in the Bible, there's like four rivers mentioned in the Bible, and the second one is the Pishon, Gihon, Euphrates, and Tigris. So for me, it kind of immediately struck a tone, because this is how propagandists and colonialists always oppress people, by erasing their history and replacing it with a lie. And so I was like, okay, if this happens, it's going to be to speak against the lies of the powerful. And so even the Gillen Journal, it's kind of going back to the truth instead of living in a lie. So the tagline, fight ignorance with knowledge. It's to seek knowledge. You never be able to defeat ignorance unless you actually seek knowledge for yourself. And you have to assume everything that you're being taught, everything that's being injected into the public realm, mostly is a lie. And so you have to uneducate yourself and then learn all over again. So even from a political perspective, I had to unwind everything that I believed with all my heart up until 2014, and I said, this is not how the world is. It can't. Evil doesn't have partisan bend, and injustice is not contained by identity. So then I started to write about these things. So initially, it was my writing. If you looked at where I was writing initially compared to now, I think my writing has gotten a lot better. So it just goes to show you, like, you don't have to be at perfect. Sometimes you just launch, and then you just build over time. So that's really the Gillen Journal was founded on December 27th in 2017. No, 2016.
Okay.
So I was writing a lot, too much, you could say, initially. But now there's 4 writers, and so there's 5 of us all together. No, 6 of us all together.
Oh, okay.
And so I write about every other day. Ideally, I want to get to a point where if everyone is writing once a week, where you have different writers that's writing a daily article. So that's what it's about. I tell people that come on board to write, you have free reign to write. I just don't want you to feed into the divisive nature of our politics. Do not present things through a left-right divide or an identity divide. You're welcome to bash the powerful. I do it. But just don't feed into their divide and conquer tactics. And so, Holly and Tim and Jack, Bree, Beatty, she's like the co-founder and editor. She's not writing too much right now, but these folks that write at the Gillen Journal, they believe in. There's a shared mission that we have, even if we don't necessarily emulate each other in everything that we do. And there's times where it makes me wince a little bit when somebody writes something I might not necessarily agree with, but that's democracy, right? You can't sit up here and tell people what to write about. As long as, a long time ago, Black Panther Party said, the reason that they became very powerful, they would tell their members, as long as you sign on to these, I think it was a 10-point plan, just agree to these 10 points. Everything else, as long as you agree with that, you're part of the Black Panther Party. It was very powerful. So they were able to get, drug dealers and lawyers. They were able to get maids and secretaries. They were able to get a broad swath of people as long as they agreed on the 10 principles of the party. So in a lot of ways, it's not that. Mine is more like a 2-point bullet. Just don't be divisive and don't feed into identity politics. Other than that, just write as you will.
That's kind of funny because I'm not plugging our org that we've been working with, or the contract, but that's funny because that's how I felt, and that's why I got on board with CFAR, because I really felt like it was not divisive. It was the populace, the issues that everyone could agree on, or the majority could agree on, and it's good when your org is small. I think that tends to be better. The fewer headbutting incidents. But yeah, I'll have to check out. I guess I thought I was just reading things you wrote, or mainly I have read just yours. I'll have to check out your other the other writers.
To the website. If you go to Writer Circle in the menu, it'll show you all the other writers.
Okay.
Like I said, I'll probably say for the time being, because the thing about a website is you have to have content at least daily. So up until everyone kind of gets to a comfort zone of writing on a once a week, for example, and everyone we're doing this as a passion.
Okay, I know of Holly and I follow each other on Twitter. I didn't realize that she wrote. Okay.
Yeah, and so Tim is another one. Bree. So yeah, they're very they write. They make it easy for me because I hate editing. I could barely stand my own editing my own work. I just want to vomit it out and just walk away, and then I have to go back because I'm like, when you start editing, it's like, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that. It's just.
It can be endless.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And I'm like, for me, how you put the dash, and then actually can make it one big dash? Like if it's not one big dash, I have to go back and replace everything with, I don't want it to be dash. I want it to be, that's how I get into that level of. Yeah,
and then you never get your stuff out, right? Then you never get it out. Yeah, I know. That's kind of why I was writing. I'm journalist. I had a couple very small publications published.
I respect your work a lot more than I respect these hacks in mainstream media. Seriously, I think the true journalists are people just like me.
Well, we just started talking, as kind of what we do. But I wrote on issues like one of my earliest ones was on lead poisoning through lead paint. So things like that, investigative journalism. But I didn't do anything for a long time. I was busy being mom. And then I got very into politics. Used to consider myself a liberal. I don't like that word anymore. And I agree with you. I mean, I'm all about, consider myself an independent. And it's funny you said that. I'm very liberal. I think I'll apply that to other things, but myself, personally, I guess I'm more conservative as a mom, certain things like that. So, but I think most people aren't really so, divided when you really get down to it and ask them about what they think about things. There's really not that much difference.
I think so if you boil down the things to 5 issues, I think 95% of human beings will actually agree. So,
but they don't want that. That would be dangerous.
Yeah, but that's the problem, though, because if you just even if you present something that's considered a conservative principle to a quarter, a liberal, but tell them, for example, conservatives say free market, which in theory I kind of ascribe to that, but it's not a free market. It's a lie. As corporatism is the complete opposite of a free market. Those markets. But if you tell a liberal, hey, listen, liberal, do you believe in retaining more resources at the local level and building up your community instead of giving power to bureaucrats to tell you how to live your life and Do you believe that you should be able to retain more of your taxes, of your money?
Mm-hmm.
It's a slam dunk. Liberals will
Right.
say yes.
Right.
But then when you tell them, do you believe in states' rights? Do you
Mm-hmm.
believe?
Mm-hmm.
So these key words
Yes.
that people's triggers, and then
Yes.
instead of, and so this is how politics thrives, because they get us to focus on these red meat issues instead of saying, actually, we both agree that, okay, we should have more power locally. We shouldn't get 33% of our taxes taken out while a billionaire is getting 0% taken out. We should have more say about our rights. We should have less laws that tell us what to do at any given time. I think both Democrats, Republicans, liberals, but we keep focusing on, these extremes.
Yep.
Useful,
Well, that's what gets ratings, and keeps it going. Keeps the system going.
Yeah.
Well, so we kind of just started doing. We tend to start at about 10:30. We were late tonight on Saturday nights, and we just have discussions like this. And sometimes we pull in a journalist like yourself or Jamarl, or who else have we had join? Brian. It's been a while. But anyway, it's kind of just, we talk about the news. We were going to talk about Syria. We could get into that if anybody's interested. But I need to take a break for a second and go get some more tea in my WikiLeaks mug.
I have to get ready myself.
But yeah, it is late. So we usually, sometimes, we'll go about an hour or more. It depends on how many people join in and how the discussion goes. So it's really kind of just anything goes. It was actually named that before. Our original guy that started.
For future broadcasts, or is this like people just sharing ideas, or?
Wait, repeat that again about future.
No, do you record them? Like, do you stream them, or?
It's streaming, so I stream to Twitter and
you could have told me. I could have told people to tune in. I didn't know if you wanted.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Share it. We love to have people join. Yeah, awesome.
I didn't know. I thought this was more like a brainstorming. So.
Oh no, we whatever.
I was cussing. No, I'm just messing with you.
That's okay.
I'm just messing with you. I'm cool.
It happens.
I'm not a fuddy duddy, so I'm right.
No, we get. Believe me, and the later it gets.
Right.
So, but I also I stream using into DLive. To Steam it, so
YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube.
It's funny because somebody who's Rata? Is that somebody here in the group?
That's someone that follows. We follow each other on Twitter. I don't know that I've ever actually spoken to them. So it's really we post the link up on Twitter. We've only rarely have we had. I think a couple weeks ago we had somebody clearly from the other side of the world pop in and flash up some porn on but typically people don't bother. I mean, if they join in, they really want to have a conversation. We don't usually have problems like that, but if we do, we have the eject button here. I'm
glad I didn't get ejected, so I'll survive my first.
Yeah, so we use Zoom, and that's how all this works streaming out. And I have to give my friend Ebon Kim credit for teaching me how to set all this up. So
out of curiosity, what's the back end? Because Zoom is just the host. But how do you actually stream it?
Zoom to OBS. Okay. Using Restream. So it's complicated, but it's not. You just have to kind of figure out how to do it, and it takes a little setup. Each time you have to set up, like if you're going, like Restream goes out to many places, but you still have to go in and manually set up, like DLive, for example. I think I'm still on DLive here. But yeah, we're all just people that want to have these conversations, big conversations that maybe we can't have with our neighbor or family. And it's usually really great. We've got a variety of people. Like I said, Snork doesn't always say a lot. Hi, Snork. But he always, if we've got a scientific thing, he jumps in. He knows the answers. And yeah, normally we would typically have more than 4 people, but I'd say like up to 10 is pretty manageable. It's still a good conversation. If it gets more than that, it's a little hard to talk.
Yeah, it gets a little out of control.
Yeah.
I
But
could cross off one of my bucket lists, which was to be involved in the Brady Bunch. So now
oh, there you go. Right. Yeah, but we did well. So I actually, with another guy, set up doing these as online town halls for candidates.
Okay.
So we may be doing some more of that where we have this set up. It might not be streamed, but it'll be, where just people, regular people can just join in and ask questions of their
that's cool. I like that.
candidate. So it's kind of a way to get around mainstream media. The news, we all kind of do our own research, so we bring different things to the table, like, because nobody can possibly read everything that's going on.
Right.
And so we kind of learn from each other, and then we have pretty good discussions.
By the way, one of the things that another reason I started, like the main engine behind the Guion Journal up to a point too, is actually conversations just like this. Like I'm able to like just soak up what people are telling me at all times, and then I reflect on it, and then I go back and write based on these conversations. So yeah,
cool.
and I think that's how everyone can affect change if we just stop yelling at each other and talk to each other. And then the minute that you do that, it's hard to hate people in abstraction.
Right.
But, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
So hopefully, maybe our kids will do it in school if we're not going to do it,
Well, my kids have to listen to me talk about all this stuff, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, there you go.
so they're learning. But yeah, I had my 13-year-old. I said, you got to listen to this thing on the Redacted Tonight interview with Dr. William Pepper. She watched it. She just looks over at me and she's like, but why are we taught this in school? She says, is this real? And I said, well, this man did a lot of investigative work for decades. And she wasn't quite sure what to make of it, But I want her to think, like, question what you hear. And that means everywhere. Question what I tell you. Like, even go look it up yourself, That's what I tell them.
It's a hard life.
It is.
I wonder, like, do I want my kids to be questioners? Because I've always gotten in trouble for questioning. I'll get in trouble in class because I'm like, well, actually, that doesn't make. I would be respectful about it, and I would ask one question's okay. Apparently there's a one question quota, but if you ask a follow-up question, you get in trouble. I've gotten detention for asking a follow-up question. So this ridiculous. This thing, our society makes it hard for people. Like, we live to whip people back into line. Everyone tries to whip each other into line because people that stand out make us nervous.
Right. Well, we do that self-policing, and we've talked about this in regards to things that are considered conspiracy theories, like me talking about MLK and Dr. William Pepper, and that maybe our own government is responsible. That we all self-police, though, because we don't want to sound like a nut job to our neighbor who's not paying attention.
We have proof that King was being harassed for years by the FBI.
Right.
But whether or not somebody actively pulled the trigger or helped somebody pull the trigger is inconsequential to me.
But people think in such extremes. If you even say something like that, then you get you're saying the government did. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it's something to look at, and it's not crazy to question it. It's not.
But if you tell them, like, if you don't go by the Alex Jones way, and you tell them, this is what happens when you have consolidated power and they feel a threat to it. This is human nature. It's happened throughout history. We're not immune to what happened to the Roman Empire, to the British. When you talk to them in this way and you present yourself as a rational person instead of sounding like a nut job,
right.
Because I've seen the opposite of it. I've seen people, like, there was this one guy that came up to, like, when I was, like, living a hard life in Colorado, he came up to me, he was like, hey, bro, and I told him about what I do. He was like, oh, so you're right about me. I said, oh, okay. What about you? He said, man, this happened to me. You can make me the next Rosa Parks. I was like, okay, I'm going to leave that. I'm like, you are not
Well,
the next Rosa Parks.
I think of it this way, and the movie 2012. I don't know if anybody saw that. There's Woody Harrelson's character, and he's like living out in the state park, and he knows the end is coming, and he's out. He just sounds crazed,
Right.
And there may be that some of those people are telling the truth, but if you
but you know what? You're right.
if you come across like that.
Right, you come across like that, they're gonna. Yeah.
Then nobody's gonna listen to you.
Or
So
what if it's this? What if we're the crazy ones for accepting this, and they're the rational ones for questioning it?
yeah,
What if we're the crazy ones? Because we have to be collectively. It's a level of derangement to keep voting in for the same people, expecting change, to accept people that are thriving through the current system, to change the status quo. This is actually a signs of mental imbalance as a society to believe these things.
Yes.
Except we do it over and over and over, and it never. It's been 100 years of the same thing, and we keep expecting change.
Yeah.
And we playing the FDR did the same thing that Obama did, the same playbook. He saved the bankers, and he told them. He even gave the same speech that Obama emulated that speech that FDR gave to the bankers. I'm the only one standing between you and the pitchforks. FDR gave that in the 1930s. Obama gave that in 2008. In both instances, the bankers fleeced and bled Americans. What do? We fought for it. We fought for it again. It's just, I don't know.
Well, I wonder what will happen with, we do have avenues like this that we didn't used to have, that we can, and we all know, Facebook and Twitter and all those platforms are squelching, silencing dissent or through whatever means they can to sort of their algorithms or, shut people down. But now we've got, that's why I went to Steam It. That's what I heard, that was, supposedly not, is a platform that doesn't do that. And I saw a lot of journalists that I respect, people I respect going there, Susie Dawson and Lee Camp and lots of people. So Claire Connolly, yeah. So it just looked like a good place to go where, some of these platforms get, I don't know, bad reputation, but anyway, because it's not policed,
Oh yeah,
but
Gab, boy, I get some interesting.
I was gonna say that, yeah. Again, I didn't want to, some people might jump on me about that, but I think Gab kind of went. It got a reputation for being very right wing, and I think it kind of became that way. Am I wrong?
I'll take it. I'll take a couple of unhinged that come at me with the most just atrocious, racist things. Now I've gone to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm just going to mute you because you have nothing to contribute to society nor to this conversation.
Right.
But as long if that's the price that I pay to be treated to that once in a while, but yet there's actually no censorship taking place, then it's okay. I've been through a lot worse when somebody called me some bigoted word. Like there was a time in my life where I was sleeping on the street. I think I'm okay, but somebody called me something that doesn't even jive with me, So.
It's interesting you say that, and I won't get too personal, but I know what you're saying, and I've had both, one foot in each world myself, and it really, I never would have thought, in my 20s I would ever be thankful for that struggle. But I am, because I see, and I'm sure they're not watching because I didn't post this to Facebook, but some of my family members that have no idea what it's like. And I'm glad that I'm not that person that doesn't understand what it's like, or that doesn't see someone that's homeless as this other. I mean, I recognize it as something that could happen to anyone. So yeah, you become grateful for experiencing those hardships because you learn something out of it, I mean, I went for, I think it was 13 years without health insurance, And then you finally get health insurance and you go, oh my God, why did I want this? These premiums are like way too high and they don't pay for anything, you know? But anyway, yeah, so we're kind of a wide variety of, we'll get people on here from all over the country. Brian's in California. I'm in North Carolina. Snork is in Iowa. Sorry, I almost said Kansas.
I was in Iowa not too long ago.
So that's also cool because we get just different perspectives just from around the country. So yeah, it's really cool. So we will do it again next Saturday night. So yeah, if you want to invite people, this is really just open for anybody who wants to talk. And yeah, this is what we do.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming. I've loved your writing, and I was just happy you wanted to come on and talk.
Cool. Thank you so
So
much.
maybe Holly or some of the other writers might want to join.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I'm gonna actually. Can you send me a quick email? With if you have like something pre-typed already.
Yep.
Put it to the team and ask them if they want to participate. I know they will actually.
Well, so each week it's a different link.
Okay.
So that's
no. I'm just talking about in terms of your what the overall program is about.
Oh, okay, sure.
You know.
Yeah,
So
I'll send it to you.
If you just send it to like info@guillermojournal.com.
Okay. I will do it. Yeah, and we really want to. I mean, sometimes we do sort of descend into silly talk. Like I said, depending on how late it gets. But we really like to keep the conversation at a certain level, of news and important stuff that's going on. So I always love to have other writers join us. That's fantastic. So yeah, I'll send you an email about it.
Good. Thank you so much, everyone, for having me on, and we'll talk soon.
Okay. All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Right.